Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the music room here at the Phipps Center for the Arts, and thank you for taking time out of your St. Patrick's Day to join us for I think is going to be a very informative and I think hopefully a fun evening as well. My name is Blake Fry. I'm president of the Hudson Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Bureau, and it's this organization's pleasure to be able to sponsor and host this evening's event. Before we begin, we have some housekeeping notes, but first I'd like to thank a few people. First, I'd obviously like to thank our two candidates, not only for agreeing to participate in the forum tonight, but for putting themselves out there, for their willingness to serve as a public servant, but then also the willingness to put themselves out there for a campaign. We've unfortunately seen on the national, yes. And I appreciate the way they've run the campaign so far. We've seen some ugly things on the national level, but I think we've seen some really good things here locally. I'd also like to thank the Phipps for helping to get this arranged. John Potter was great to work with and his suggestions on where to do it. And I'd like to thank the River Channel for their assistance in setting up for this event and for recording it so those who are out having a pint of green beer or Guinness and couldn't make it tonight, that they'll be able to enjoy it on that channel at a later time. Also like to thank the Hudson Star-Observer for being here tonight and covering the event. A little bit about the format, a little bit of housekeeping notes. The first housekeeping note is, if you have not done so already, please silent or put your cell phone on vibrate. Your ringtone of Uptown Funk is a lot of fun, but probably not what we want to hear in the middle of the debate. We're going to have opening and closing statements from each of the candidates. We did a very official coin flip a little bit ago. Vicki will give the first of the opening statements, and then Rich will give the second, and then we'll flip that order for closing statements at the end. So Rich will go first with his closing statement, and then Vicki with hers. Opening and closing statements will be 3 minutes in length. And then we will answer questions that you have submitted. Thank you. These are fantastic questions. We have exactly enough to fill our time. But if you think of a really outstanding question, please feel free to still submit it, and we can bump a not-so-great question. Just kidding. If you submitted a question, I don't read yours. It's not because I toss it out completely. It's because somebody asked the same question, maybe in a different format, or I got their question first, whatever it may be. But I think everything that somebody asked, we're going to be able to touch on in the questions tonight. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question. Again, we'll alternate who takes turns answering the question. We're going to try to keep the focus on issues that are relevant to Hudson, to the position of mayor for the most part. I think you all did a very good job with that with your questions. Nobody got lost in the muck on things that are happening in Madison or happening in Washington, D.C. So we're going to have a really good focus on the Hudson community and a really good variety of topics. So I'm encouraged by that as well. And then I promise you we'll be out of here by 8 p.m. at the absolute latest. That'll give people plenty of time to continue to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, give you a chance to get ready for work tomorrow, and a chance for me to watch my alma mater play in the NCAA tournament. They tip off at 8:20. So, all right. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and start the candidate forum, and with that, we'll open it up. And Vicki, would you like to start us off with a 3-minute opening statement?
Thank you very much, Blake. First, I would like to thank you for moderating this evening, and for the chamber, and for the chamber for hosting this event. They do a lot of wonderful things for this community. And thank all of you for being here this evening and taking time to get to know us. When I am out knocking doors, and the question that comes up most often when I'm knocking doors is, why in the world are you running for mayor? And to that I would tell you, I feel absolutely compelled to do this. When I first decided to run for office, when I first decided to run for office, the person running in my district, I felt was not representing us. And so the more I looked into, what we were budgeting and how and what we were budgeting for, and the vision and the plan for the city, the more I realized that with my experience that I could make a difference. And I really feel it's imperative that in the next 2 years, what we do in the plan and to move forward. And I do have a vision and a plan. This evening you'll have a chance to hear how I stand on a number of the issues. And while I've been out knocking on doors and talking and listening to what issues are important to you, I want you to know that I will not, that I will continue to do that. And no, I will not continue to knock doors, though. But I will continue to listen. As far as my professional experience, what I do now for fun, actually, is I provide accounting and financial services to various businesses. And when I say fun, it's because I love budgets and I love dealing with financials. In fact, if I would put on a class on how to read a balance sheet if I thought anybody would attend that. And I have a couple years of real estate sales, which I think brings its own skill set. But prior to that, I started a company. And by that is no small feat. I was a single mom with no safety net. And I started a company, and over a 10-year span, I grew it to over $3.2 million in annual sales. And I've said before that it takes, a lot of hard work, and because of that hard work, I would be successful. And I would say that is partly true, but you have to have a lot of business acumen to be able to make a success of a business, to be able to have a vision. And so, in closing, I'd like to quote from a letter to the editor that an employee of mine wrote. I had the pleasure of working with her when she was a founder and president of Abacus Plus. She is an astute businesswoman, and it was a pleasure to work with. You will notice I said work with, not for. Her appreciation for her employees motivated me and my coworkers in a way that allowed true teamwork. What stands out most is her endless energy. I believe her energy, along with her business and budgeting skills, to be a great asset. I believe in her commitment to build a strong community. We need someone who can listen, prioritize, bring new focus, delegate, and motivate. Mary Martin, thank you very much for that letter. And I know it's those qualities that will make me a strong mayor. Thank you.
All right, Rich.
Céad Míle Fáilte. That's 100,000 welcomes in Gaelic. Good evening. Thank you for being here, and happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. My name is Rich O'Connor. I'm running for mayor, and I am here this evening to ask for your vote and your support, and hopefully by the end of the evening I will have given you enough reasons to cast your vote for me when you go to the polls for the general election on Tuesday, April 5th. My wife Cindy and I were both born on the east side of St. Paul. We spent in our younger years much of our time in the St. Croix Valley, and especially in the Hudson area. We moved to Hudson 16 years ago, and Hudson is just a marvelous, marvelous gem. For those of you that were born here, you already know that. For those of you who moved here, you likely moved here for the same reasons that my wife and I moved our family here. We came here to Hudson because of the strong commitment that the community makes to its residents, but most importantly, to its families. Good, vibrant communities consist of a number of things that are very important. Outstanding health care, a vibrant business community, amenities like we have here, the Phipps Center for the Arts, library, and most importantly, a strong education with strong educational values. That was the primary purpose for us moving our kids here. Hudson has been a very nurturing environment for all of us, especially for us. Our two youngest kids came here in third grade and first grade, and attended EP Rock, attended the Hudson Middle School, attended and graduated from Hudson High School. This environment has been fantastic for us to raise our kids, and we think it's a fantastic environment to raise everybody else's family's kids here as well. My parents taught me years ago that one of the most important things in life is community service. In my lifetime, I've given over 35 years in community service in a variety of different capacities, elective, appointive, and volunteer. And that was for both respective communities in St. Paul and in Hudson. Since being in Hudson, I have chaired the Hudson Hospital Foundation Board. I chair the Hudson Library Board. I sit on the Hudson Foundation, the Library Foundation. I have worked with the Hudson Hockey Association. I was vice chair there. I worked with the Hudson Boosters. I was a coach. I think it's important to give back to our community. But this time, I felt it was time once again for me to seek elective office because I think it's important for what we do here in our community. I'm making a strong commitment to this community because it has made a strong commitment to me and my family. In fact, my commitment is so strong, it's St. Patrick's Day, and I'm here spending this wonderful evening with all of you wonderful people. My commitment is this. I want to keep Hudson strong. I want to keep Hudson vibrant. I want it a better community for my families and your families, next generations.
All right, thank you. If you're wondering what I'm doing with this, it's a card that says, great job. No, it's a 15-second notice, this very fancy card that I made. Let them know we're down the last 15 seconds. We're going to try to adhere to that pretty closely. We're not going to be super strict. There will be no buzzers, no orchestra playing them off the stage, but we're going to try to get to as many of these fantastic questions as possible. So let's jump in with the first one, and Rich, we'll stick with you on this first question. You both have been out campaigning for quite a while now. We're actually in phase 2 of the mayoral campaign. What is the biggest issue facing Hudson, and what quality do you possess to fix it?
You know, in talking with people, the biggest concern that I'm hearing is taxation. And I think that, I don't think we can talk about it enough. You know, unfortunately, it is talked about, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but because it is talked about so much, it's unfortunate that people just seem to think that maybe that's trite. We need to focus on taxation. It just was announced the other day that Wisconsin has the 4th highest property taxes in the country. 4th highest. Taxation is important to people. And we need to be very cognizant of what any decision that we make, the taxpayer must be foremost in our decision-making process. So that's what I hear from people. They're worried about taxes. So what's the best way to offset taxes? That's to generate revenue. So the next biggest thing I've heard out there, and while I've been out talking to people, door knocking, on the phones, is the dog track. That's the biggest elephant in the room. Nobody seems to want to talk about what we're going to do with the dog track. That's a revenue generator. And unfortunately, it's on the tax rolls right now, but unfortunately, it's not generating the type of revenue that it could. And we need to make that a very productive resource for our community. So those are the issues I think that have been foremost. Of course, we always hear about infrastructure. Infrastructure is with us, will never go away. You can't go to any community without anybody talking about the potholes in the streets, sidewalks needing repair, people with their snow blowers are running into the aprons on their driveways and things like that. Well, it will always be with us, and we need to plan for constructive regeneration of our infrastructure. So I guess those would be the biggest. How much time have I got?
You've got 15 seconds.
I can always fill that up. So, you know, the other thing is just quality of life issues. We have things with the parks and making sure that we have good facilities for our kids. There's no doubt about that. There are plenty of important things that we need to talk about, and I'm looking forward to working to resolve a lot of these issues.
Thank you. When I've been out knocking doors, I've been hearing more about one with the infrastructure with road maintenance. Especially when I've been up in Red Cedar Canyon, people say that I think the development went in about 10 years ago, that the roads are fine, but we're not maintaining them. And that we all know that if you don't, put on seal coat, it's going to be a lot more expensive to fix the road. So that, wondering if we're going to be doing a better job with road maintenance. The other issue, of course, that comes up when I've been out knocking doors is about the school. What to do about the referendum. And what I feel is important about that is, as a mayor, I feel when there are divisive issues out in the community, what are you going to, I feel it's key that the mayor address those issues and try to build consensus. So when it involved the school, I made sure that I attended, when the district went to look at the high school in Minnetonka, that I was along with that I attended the meetings, that I watched the videos, so that I could be informed with telling people, talking to them about the referendum. I think that's a key thing for the mayor to do. The other issues that come up, the road construction, the school. I'm trying to think of other things that people have asked me about. Yeah,
Okay.
those are probably the key issues I get asked about.
Okay, thank you. All right, Vicki, Rich brought it up,
Okay.
but you get to go first with it.
All right.
And it was asked 32 times. What do
Oh.
you think should be done about the dog track?
Well, I don't think the current plan is working, and that is just letting it sit on the market. I do think it's, at this point, the city should look at what options are available to the city. Because when you look at the golf course, that one on the market, we knew that was not going to be a golf course. Or I mean, that they were determined not to keep it a golf course. And so we were, instead of being proactive and looking at maybe what options were available, we became reactive. And now we have a development going in there. So I think it's important with the dog track that we be proactive, that the city look at what are the options, what might make the city money. One of the things could be, does the city buy the property and get it ready for development and then sell the property and now it's on our tax rolls? Does that make the city money? Well, it's something to look at. If it doesn't, what other options? But I do think it's time that we be proactive on that issue.
Thank you.
I think the dog track is a very critical piece of what the future looks like for Hudson. I think for a number of reasons. Number one, it represents about a third of the developable property, commercially zoned property that we have in the city. We're running out of commercial property. We're running out of opportunities to generate revenue here, and this is a very critical piece. That's important, and I think that, number one, I've heard people discuss having the city buy it. I don't think that's a good idea, because by us buying it, it does take it off the tax rolls, and it is revenue generating right now, but not to the extent that we could be generating revenue. We could have a much higher impact on our revenue source coming from that area. If I'm elected, that will be my top priority, is to get that dog track productive. And my ideas on that is to go across the border to Minnesota and bring some of those businesses over here. We have such a tremendous facility. We have tremendous resources. We've got a great community, and there are a lot of people that covet this area and would love to move their business here. We can offer tax incentives through tax increment financing, perhaps. We could make it a TIF district like our business park was at one point. Provide great incentives to bring people over here. Just the whole idea, the notion of the tax base here for commercial property being much less than Minnesota is very attractive. We need to get this productive. In addition, we've got resources here with Indian Head, Votech, we've got resources with the University of Wisconsin, River Falls, and we need to tap those resources to perhaps bring, think about this, a tech center in here. A campus that is technological center. There are plenty of businesses that would love to come over and have a campus like that. Perhaps a business conference center over here. This is great. That's low impact for infrastructure. We don't want high impact infrastructure businesses here that use our water, use our capacity for sewer treatment. We want low impact environmental services over here, but we have a tremendous opportunity in front of us right now. It could be very exciting to develop that park.
All right, thank you. This is the one time we're going to skew off of a question that would be directly facing the mayor or the city council right now, but we did receive about 9 questions about it, and I chose the simplest of them all. So Rich, you get to answer first. Where do you stand on the school referendum?
You know, first of all, the education is very important to me and my family. I've mentioned that in my opening remarks. I want to give you, please indulge me, I want to give you a quick story about when we moved here. Our 2 youngest were in private school in St. Paul and St. Pascal's. We wanted to get them into a public school and public education, and this was the best place that we saw for them. My son had been number 1 or number 2 in his reading class in both 1st and 2nd grade at St. Pascal's. We moved here. He started 3rd grade in September at the beginning of the school year, and within 2 weeks, he was in remedial reading. And my wife and I thought, wow, that's just incredible. What a great move we made here. It took him a couple months to get back up to the head of his class in reading, but what a statement, what a validation of the move that we made. Best thing that we've ever done, best decision we've ever made. I think, frankly, it is inappropriate to ask one of us, either of us, how we stand on this school referendum, because you're asking us to use the gravitas of either the office or the potentiality of the office to weigh in on a referendum that's to be decided by the voters here in our city. And people are asking us to use our position to influence the outcome of that. How would you like the chair of the county board coming in here weighing in on whether we should do street assessments or not? How would you like somebody else coming in and dictating what we should be doing with our dog park, weighing in on that type of referendum? This is up to the people. Now, having said that, personally, I definitely have an opinion on this. But it's not one that I'm going to go out and put out in the front page of the paper or put in my campaign material, but I will tell everybody here, I support it. And I also want to tell you this. I'll make this commitment to everybody in our community. When this passes, if it passes, and I think it will, taxes are going to go up. The county, with the work that they've done in increasing our debt load, is going to increase taxes as well. The last thing we need is tax increases in the future coming from our city, providing a triple tax increase for our residents. I will make this commitment to everybody. If this referendum passes, I'm going to do everything I can to keep city taxes down to offset what might happen with your tax load.
Thank you. Vicki.
Thanks. And I would a little bit disagree with that. I will tell you that I am behind the referendum, all three of them. And when I'm out knocking doors and talking to people about the referendum, I get the sense that 1 and 2 will pass. But I would like to spend just a minute on talking about then referendum number 3, because I think it'd be important if we could pass them all. And here's the thing: we've got a football field, as everyone knows, at the elementary school, and it's only used about 6 times per year, because the turf, it needs to recover, and it's not the right size for other sports. So if we had the field at the high school, it would be used for track and field, for lacrosse, for soccer, for football, and even the marching band, which now has to do it in the parking lot. And the other piece of that is with the since we're adding an addition to the building, now all of a sudden we have to become compliant with the DNR for rainwater runoff. So if we do it at the same time that we're putting in the artificial turf and digging that out, it will actually, save us money. We have to take care of this issue. So if we could do it at the same time, I think it would benefit the school. That, and we spend thousands of dollars in performance when there's a performance at the high school, in renting rigging for the lighting. And so this referendum would include updating the lighting in the auditorium, which again would ultimately save us some money. So so I'm excited about the referendum, and why I realize that this is not a mayoral issue. But here's the thing: when there is a divisive issue in this community, I flat out say it is my responsibility to learn about it, talk to people about it, build consensus. That is a key factor of the mayor, I think, is in building consensus. So that's what I have to say about the referendum.
Okay, thank you. Vicki, you're first with the next question.
Okay.
The next two deal with transportation in different forms. What should be done about public transportation in Hudson?
We have public transportation in Hudson? No, but, so this is an issue, though, that I'm familiar with, in that currently New Richmond has a monthly meeting that meets to discuss public transportation. There are regional transportation areas around, in surrounding communities, but not in ours. This is a federal program, this regional transportation. And so it's about bringing federal money, our taxpayer dollars, back here. And right now, there is nobody from Hudson that is sitting at the table with that group. They've reached out, but nobody is there. I've attended a number of the meetings until they actually moved it to a day I couldn't attend right now the last couple months. But and this is not some short-term fix. But if we're not discussing the problem with transportation, or at least have it on the agenda or being at the table at these meetings, nothing will ever happen. We will never have public transportation. And what's key with that is there are people that need to get to work. Rather than paying them to stay home, we need to be able to get them to work. And so I think somebody should be at the table in New Richmond, attending these meetings to be part of the solution.
Rich?
And Blake, could you repeat the question again,
I
please?
said, the question was exactly, what should be done about public transportation in Hudson?
Okay. I guess I've heard inklings of moving people between the Twin Cities and the Hudson area, in particular with light rail and things like that. And I know it's on the agenda in the future for discussion. I have friends that sit on the Metro Council in St. Paul, and they mention to me every now and then about any discussion that might include moving people between Hudson and St. Paul in particular. Although, of course, nothing has actually been done about it, but there are people that are talking about it. I can tell you this, I was a supporter of the People Mover. I don't know what they, ultimately became light rail transit over in St. Paul, Minneapolis. When I was in the legislature, I voted for that. I thought it was an important element of moving people around, especially to get people to and from work. I think that's critical. I don't know exactly where I'm at with public transportation right now. I would need to see what the benefits are to our Hudson community. And again, I would always weigh the benefits versus the cost, and what that means to ultimately the people that are going to pay for it. So I guess I don't have a definitive answer on that because I don't see a proposal in front of me, and it's certainly something I think that we need to consider, something that we need to look at, need to determine whether there is a sufficient need here in our community for it.
Okay, thank you. I chair the chamber, I co-chair the chamber's parking committee, so I'm so glad, Rich, I get to ask somebody else this question. Do you have any ideas for solving the parking problem in downtown Hudson?
Obviously, this has become a real problem in Hudson. I remember when there were no streetlights in downtown Hudson. I remember when there was absolutely no problem parking. You could shoot a cannon down Main Street in Hudson. Not saying that those were better days than they are today, but I certainly remember that, and I guess maybe that's ages me for a number of people here. Parking obviously is something that we need to address. The one thing that I would really like to see done is I think that if we could take our fire department, emergency medical service, move that somewhere else and take that area, build that up, put a parking ramp in there, I think that would go a long way to solving some of our solution, or providing a solution to some of the parking problems that we have. I think that, and I would hope that would be a private enterprise. Once again, I would look to perhaps tax increment financing to try to bring some type of private owner in to purchase that property and develop a parking ramp. That would mean, of course, that we'd be paying for parking there, but I don't see a problem with that necessarily. I think that the businesses downtown are the ones that are going to benefit from the parking, and so they would need to weigh in on this and also ante up to some extent, I would think, if we can't get somebody, a private owner, to develop a ramp downtown. I think that area, if we could do that, if we could develop that would probably solve our issue.
Okay, thank you. Vicki?
Yes, and it is a problem and has been a problem for some time, the parking issue in Hudson. And I know there's been a study that's been done as far as what we can do. They've looked at a parking ramp there, but we'd probably keep part of the police department, the fire department there. But there has been a plan. They have done a study. And so what's happened to that study? To me, that's part of the issue. We need to look at that study and make a plan for it. Because if whatever it is, if it can't happen this year, well, what is the plan? How are we gonna, which of the ideas that they came up with would work? How are we gonna fund it? How are we gonna move forward with it? We know it's an issue, so we have to develop a plan. Right now, whether it can be done in a year or 2 years, what is the plan? We need to make a plan rather than do a study and then it sits there and we haven't made a decision. So I think it's time that we make a decision and make a plan for it.
Okay, thank you. Next question, we'll start with Vicki. What is the future of the Hudson Area Joint Library? Should it be a municipal library?
Oh. Well, there's a big consequence to initially if we were to switch to a municipal library. And so that I would look to the library board on what they'd want to do. Because initially, so if we were to switch to a municipal library, we would have to fund the library at, I believe the amount that you are required to fund it at is $650,000. And so it would be a major change initially before you would, I think it takes about 2 years before you get paid back. So ultimately, is that something to look at? Again, I would have to defer and find out more information. I do feel, though, that we are underfunding the library, that the library is an issue. And people may say, what do you mean by underfunding the library? We just opened on Mondays, we just gave it more money. But when you look at the statistics on funding the library, which I had looked up, there's a basic level, a moderate level, an enhanced level, and an excellent level. And I'll talk about just about the hours that the library is open. They say, and we were open 43 hours, then we gave the library more money, and it's now open 53 hours. They say that the basic level, and this is by they, it's based on a city our size, a library our size, that we should be, that the basic level of service would be open 62 hours. We're open 53 hours. We are underfunding the library, and I do think it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And that the same thing goes for the amount of books that we have at the library. The basic level, they say, and I'll just throw out a number, is over 100,000. We have 59,000. So we do need to invest in our library. It is a shining example of your city. It does represent your city.
Rich?
Are there more questions on the library? Do we have to cover it all in this question?
This is the one, well, I'll let you address the library any way you would like, but this is the one question regarding the library.
I mean, obviously, Vicki understands there are a lot of issues involved here, and there are,
That's right.
hopefully there are more questions. But all right, so do I think it should be the joint area library should be a municipal library? Absolutely not. We have Jim O'Connor, who, by the way, is of no relation to me. Had a tremendous vision years ago to make our library a joint library. He brought that to fruition. He did a great job. It has created a couple controversial things, but there are things that we can work through. Funding had become an issue for us a few years back, especially when the recession hit. And the joint members were not able to step up to the type of funding levels that were required by law at the time. That's unfortunate, but at the same time, we have come up with some very creative ways to make our library work, and we had to go dig inside and take a serious look at what we were doing and how we were doing it. The delivery of the services that we were providing. Had to close on Mondays, there's no doubt about it. We opened up again, and I think that we're doing a very good job. If we were to go with a municipal library, it would result in Hudson paying twice the amount of money that they're paying right now to fund that library. Now, if we're talking about arguments about funding levels of increases of 2, 3, 4, 5% per year, think about doubling that. We don't have the capacity to do that. We cannot do that. And it would also mean that all the other joint members would end up just about doubling what it would cost them as well. It's just not a good idea. And I know that we have proponents of that municipal library right here in this room. And I would say it is not, it's a misguided notion. It's not anything that we should be doing. Relative to the amount of service that we get versus how much money that we are spending, first of all, the number of books that we have in the library is not dictated by the funding level that we have. It's more dictated by the fact that because we went to the second floor when we bought that building, nobody knew that the infrastructure of that building would not allow for additional weight, and it had to be reinforced to put even the number of books up there that we have. We cannot physically put more books up there without creating a very dangerous situation in that building, unfortunately. Relative to where we sit with funding levels versus the average, I hear this all the time. We need to get our funding level back up to the average. Is that what we want, is to be average? You know, we've got some great service going on right now with below average funding. We've got one of the best libraries in the whole area. The recession and the cutback in funding gave us a great opportunity to take a look at how we deliver services. We've got a great library director. I hope everybody in here is utilizing that library. Tina Norris is a fantastic asset for our community, for our library, and I can't say enough about what we're doing, not to mention the fact that we now have a public-private partnership with the Hudson Foundation, Hudson Library Foundation, which is now raising money in support of the library. There are a lot of people that advocate for no private money. It should all be public money. The whole trend nationwide right now is public-private partnerships, and we started that here in Hudson, and it's underway, and it's doing very well.
All right, thank you. Rich, well, this next question is for you first.
It's about the library?
It's not about the library, but it is about something you talked about earlier. So as mayor, will you try to attract more businesses that provide career opportunities? And if so, how will you do that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that, again, I'm going back to the dog track. We still have some space available up in the business park, and that could be utilized for bringing business in here. And we, in fact, by the way, have turned down business. I don't know if people know that, but we have turned down businesses that wanted to go up there because the impact to our community, to our environment, and to our infrastructure capacity was so dramatic that we turned down those businesses and said, nope, that's not a good fit for us. So, but I absolutely want to continue to develop the business park and continue to develop the dog track, or go to develop the dog track. And you know what? I do want career opportunities. I really want career opportunities. I want to give our kids a reason to stay here in Hudson, not because it's close to Minneapolis or St. Paul, but because there's a great job opportunity right here in our hometown. And I think, as I said before, this is a very exciting time for us. We have some great opportunities ahead of us. And I will go out and I will actively look to recruit businesses to come into that park and utilize that space that we have and make that a much better resource here for our community and bring revenue in to the bottom line.
All right. Thank you. Vicki.
Well, we naturally attract businesses here with our proximity to the Twin Cities. And the feel of the community here and the river, the growth that we have here, we are going to attract businesses. But here's what I think we need. When I've talked about this before about having a comprehensive plan, because I think we need to look at what businesses we want to attract here. I think it needs to be a planned out. What do we need? What are we missing? What type of businesses do we want to develop? Engineering, clean manufacturing. And so develop that plan. I have worked with businesses. I will be the first one on the phone to connect and reach out if we determine what it is we want to bring here. So.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. The next two questions actually relate to spending and budgeting issues. Vicki, this one is for you first. How will you ensure minimal tax increases for those who cannot afford increases now, such as seniors on fixed incomes, the unemployed, the disabled, et cetera?
And how will, what was the very beginning, because I heard the.
He said, how will you ensure minimal tax increases for those who cannot afford them.
Sure. And just so people realize too how, before I started my company, I was, as I had mentioned, I was a single mom. I was working at West Publishing Company, and I was barely making it from paycheck to paycheck. I had a car, and to be able to start that car, I had to park on a slope. I know my family realizes, because I had to pop the clutch most of the time to get that thing started. Yeah, some know what that's like. And it was Christmas, and my daughter was 3 years old, and I did not have enough money to buy Christmas presents for my daughter. And so my brother and my two sisters, who are here this evening, were living in California at the time, and they sent me the presents so that I could have a Christmas for my daughter. And so if people want to know if I can relate to being on a fixed income or just barely making it, I can tell you, I can definitely relate with that. And my business experience, knowing that you have to invest in a business, but you have to be creative and coming up with ways and working within the budget. So with that skill set, I will work and do everything that's in my power as mayor to not increase taxes, to work within a budget. And I do believe that that is my skill. I would go to each, whether it's the police department, whether it's the utilities, I will analyze and look over budgets to try and work within it. But we also need to invest in the community. But it's being creative and finding ways. And I have some ideas, but I don't know if my...
You've got 20 seconds left.
Not enough, but another question.
All right.
So, in the work that I do, I'm a financial advisor, certified financial planner. I work with a cross-section of people here in not only our town, but around the Twin Cities area, but specific to our town. I get to see firsthand the consequences of any type of fee increase, any type of tax increase on regular folks. And I work with some very wealthy people, and I work with people that aren't so wealthy, but need to have a plan in place. And sometimes it's unfortunate and astounding, frankly, to see the impact that any of those increases might have on them. The last thing that I want to do here in Hudson is to see people that were born and raised here have to move because the value of their property increased so dramatically and their income is fixed and they can't keep up with the value of their property. And that's because obviously people want to live here. And it's great that we all have homes that are valued a lot more than maybe what we paid for, but those people that were born and raised in the homes that they live in, it's just an unfortunate situation. So what would I do? The first thing I think is to consider perhaps freezing property taxes for senior citizens, maybe have a means test for that. I don't want to have people move out of our community. I want everybody that lived here, that participated here, that made this community what it was, what it is, to stay here and have the ability to stay here. I think that's important. So I think that if I am elected mayor, believe me, I will work to try to do something to make sure that those people do not have to move and that we can helpfully mitigate any impact that tax increases would have on them.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe not the opposite side of the coin, but related, and we've heard a little bit about this point. Are there any areas that you think that specifically the city should increase its spending?
Oh, is this to me?
This is you, yep.
Okay. I'm not opposed to spending. I mean, obviously, that's what, government is in the business to provide public safety, provide different social services, and to provide infrastructure. There's no doubt about it. I don't know that I would spend the money the way I was reading in the paper the other day that Vicki might, but there are some things I think that we probably are in need of. I was talking downtown with Tom Sifko, who many know is a consultant engineer for the city. He is on a contract basis. That oftentimes that contract situation can cost the city more money than if we had a full-time engineer. Now, there's an ebb and flow there, because oftentimes we don't have a lot of activity that would require that we have a full-time engineer. But at the same time, there are other times when we're paying more than we need to, or more than we would if we actually had somebody on staff, because of this is one of those times, by the way, with the golf course development happening right now. And so, you know what, that might be something that I would be taking a look at, is perhaps hiring a full-time engineer, because I think the return to us would be significant. One of the other things I was thinking is the parking lot downtown at the boat ramp generates $45,000 a year. Have you looked at the size of that lot? It's about 1/3 of what it used to be back in the 1980s. Remember when the ball field was down there, when the Boosters used to play baseball downtown? People remember that? That was pretty cool. The parking lot went deeper into the park. Of course, that park is utilized more for recreational activity now, but I think it might be wise to expand that parking lot down there again, because that is a revenue generator, and that would pay for itself and then some. So there are a couple areas that I think that we could increase spending. Public safety is always an issue, and also with infrastructure issues, we're going to have to take a look at what's happening with the development. I think it's called Carmichael Heights. Is that what we're calling that now, with the old golf course? There may be some need for additional capital spending to be able to service that area. So yeah, those would be the things that I'd be taking a look at first.
Okay, thank you. Vicki?
Yes, there are a number of things, as far as investing in the community, but I look at it as reallocating funds, and not necessarily increase spending. Increase spending, and we need to invest in our roads, but smartly. We have to look at maintaining our roads. Everybody's had a driveway, and when you maintain it, when you seal coat it and do the crack seal, you're not. If you wait 10 years and don't do any of those maintenance, then the cost of repairing that is substantially increased. I've talked with the finance director prior to this, and said it is costing us millions of dollars because we are not maintaining our roads prior to doing the major road work on them. So I do think we need to look at the 5-year plan for the road construction and come up with a better plan. Look at how we would do that, and so I think that's an important piece. Mainly it's again just looking at the priorities for each department, for the public safety, for the police department, and working within a budget and what's important to them.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Vicki first. Are there any specific provisions in the city's comprehensive plan you would change, and why?
Are there any city provisions?
Any specific provisions in the city's comprehensive plan you would change, and if so, why?
Well, I don't know that I would change any of the provisions in the plan. I would just update the plan, because we really need to know, for instance, when a new development comes in, what is the plan for walkways and bike trails? What type of businesses do we want to attract here in Hudson? What is the plan? I think, the comprehensive plan needs to include what are we going to do with the dog track. So I do think the complete plan needs to be overhauled, and putting that plan in place, I think, is key. That way, I feel like right now we're just addressing each issue, like the golf course, on a piece-by-piece basis, rather than knowing the vision that we're going to have for Hudson and how we're going to ensure that it stays there. So really, I would like to put a team together, from the council, from the community, and get that plan started.
Thank you. Rich?
Well, a comprehensive plan isn't my issue. That's Vicki's issue. She's been saying that's one of the things that she's been campaigning on for quite some time. It's not my issue necessarily, but this is the comprehensive plan. This is a book that was laid out back in 2009, and it's got very specific recommendations for growth and controlled growth, sustainable growth, different things that we can do in our community. Vicki just mentioned like the golf course, obviously, 2009, we really had no idea that, that we'd be building houses on that right now or talking about it at this point. The comprehensive plan, by the way, is on the books already to be updated. In fact, it should be updated generally every 10 years, and right now it is scheduled to be updated next year. There was $25,000 set aside by the City Council last year for the updating of the comprehensive plan, and another $25,000 in the current budget for a total of about $50,000. It is a very comprehensive process, one that involves our teams downtown. I would not presume to get involved in that other than to make sure it happens on time, on schedule, and it's being done. So, you know, I would say the one thing that I would definitely add in is once again talking about whether we need a full-time engineer to be able to be overseeing our comprehensive plan. Vicki had mentioned the 5-year plan. It's a rolling 5-year plan, and that seems to be doing a very good job of prioritizing things that need to be done relative to infrastructure. We're not really behind schedule on anything that they have prioritized. Money's been set aside for additional street repair for this year, even though we have money already set aside for the Vine Street and the Tower Road projects. So I think that our council has done a great job, not just the council. I got to give kudos to our staff, to Tom Zuley, to Denny Darnold, et cetera, for the work that they've done on our rolling 5-year plan. They update it every single year and look at new infrastructure needs that we have. I think they've done a very good job with that, and I rely on them. I would continue to rely on them for the work that they do.
Okay. Thank you. Earlier, we got to use the word developable. I spent a lot of time in the mirror this morning trying to get that word down. It's a tongue twister. Along those lines, would you consider any future annexation of land surrounding the city?
Would I consider? Absolutely, I would. It's not the kind of thing that the city goes out and generally initiates on their own, however. Usually annexation has been when somebody else, owners of property, would like to become part of Hudson. And of course, it has to be contiguous. The property has to be contiguous with property that is already within the city limits. Interestingly enough, we do have some little pockets, little enclaves, islands, if you will, of property that do not belong within the city but are enveloped by the city itself. But they didn't want to be annexed. Do I think we could annex property? Would I consider it? Absolutely. The Atwood property at the corner of Carmichael and Vine is a classic example of property that is likely to be asking to be annexed because of it's for sale right now for $4 million. It's, I don't know, 40 acres or more, 60 acres. And there's already talk of putting another business strip mall in there and perhaps some housing in the back end of that. Absolutely, I would annex that. What that would do is provide an opportunity then to annex property perhaps right across the street from that, because that then would be contiguous with property that we have in the city. So it's kind of a little putting together the puzzle. Now, the only way I would consider doing that annexation is, first of all, we have to consider the impact on our capacity for infrastructure and specifically our wastewater and our ability to deliver fresh water to those areas. So, but yeah, I would, you know, by the way, housing, to do this for housing, I'm not so sure. We'd have to really take a serious look at that, because housing is not really a win for us with the tax base. The services and infrastructure costs to be able to go in and service any type of housing development is at best a wash, a net wash. At worst, it costs us a lot of money, more money than we generate from the revenue coming from the taxes that we would be bringing in from those properties. So in order to develop and annex, I'd want to make sure that it's going to be good revenue producing property.
All right, thank you. Vicki?
Well, on this issue, we agree completely. I would definitely look, well, and that's the city's job to look at annexation because it's going to come from the property owners. They're going to come to the city and request to be annexed, and So you look at it on a case-by-case basis. And as you mentioned, how does it affect the infrastructure? Because, yes, residential areas barely break even because of the, the police and the roads and maintaining that. So absolutely in agreement that we look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. This next question I have to plead a little bit of ignorance about. I don't know a lot, so the other ones I've been pretty informed on, so it's time to educate me, Vicki.
Okay.
What do you think of the special assessment of roads being discussed? Do you think changes to this policy should be made?
Yeah, it's a complicated issue, and for those of you that aren't aware of how it's currently done, is on a street, if you have a curb, you pay for the curb and the gutter that's in front of your place, and you pay, I believe it's 50% of the curb and gutter and 100% of your driveway. But if your neighbor on the other side doesn't have, if their curb wasn't dinged up by the plow and they don't have to have theirs replaced, well, then they're not charged. But, and that this gutter, though, even though it's being used by the whole street, well, it's only in front of the house that they're in, they're the ones charged, not the rest of the block. So as you can imagine, when it comes to the city assessing individuals for this, it's a very complicated issue. So I do think that piece of it needs to be fixed, because I think it'll save money in the long run by making it easier to do the assessments. But and so what I think they would do is the curb and gutter would be divided, by the block and not just by the individual homeowner. But what they were also talking about is bringing into play also taking on a portion of the actual roadway, which they do not currently, homeowners currently do not pay for that piece. And they looked at Grandview Drive to see what would it be if we took Grandview Drive, which was just finished, and did the plan that they want to change it to. They said the overall project, what they paid was 18%. And so but in the council meetings, they talked about maybe going up to 35%, where the homeowners would pay up to 35%. I'm 100% do not agree with having the road, the road piece of it taken up by the homeowners. We cannot afford to charge homeowners more money when it comes to road construction. So I don't know if I explained it as well.
It's complicated.
It's complicated.
I hope that I'm going to be very clear on this to people. Let me preface what I'm going to say with, I would not support anything that would result in a net tax increase to our residential property owners. I know that this issue has been before the City Council. It was recently brought up, and one of the factors involved in this issue was the use of, for our big commercial players, and the usage of the roadways to get their trucks in and out, as well as all the heavy traffic that's going to, for example, our grocery stores, Target, Walmart, the big box stores, and just heavy traffic use lanes. So I understand that there are people that are saying, why are they paying the same amount as we're paying? They're generating a lot more of the infrastructure need than they're paying for. And to some extent, that might make some sense. Now, keep in mind that all of the road work that's being paid for is being paid out of the general fund. We're already being levied for this. Whether you think you're being assessed or not, you are, because it's part of the general fund. You're being levied for all of that road resurfacing. All right? So now potentially then, if you're going to assess people based upon the usage or based upon the cost of your area, it should mean that you would get a tax reduction then from the general levy, because you don't have to pay for it out of the general fund anymore. Again, it's a little complicated. Let me go back to this. I will not support anything that will result in a net tax increase for our residential property owners. If through investigation we find, however, that it would save money for them, it's something absolutely that I would consider.
Thank you. We're going to shift a little away from issues and a little bit more towards the qualities of you as candidates with the last few questions that we have here. We have a situation where we're a city of Hudson, but we are in a larger area that's growing quickly, so it requires a lot of interaction with the surrounding municipalities, villages, townships. Could you give examples of how you have worked with other units of government and how you would approach such situations?
You know, I spent many years in elective office and in other appointed positions. I sat on the St. Paul Capital Improvement Budget Committee. I was, as mentioned, I was in the legislature in Minnesota for 12 years. I worked with local governments. I worked with county governments. I worked with other state governments. I worked with the federal government. Some of the things that you may know about that you could take a look at that were the fruits of some of those collaborations were Senator Kelly over there at the time and Representative Steve Trimble. We were able to move Metro State University over to the old St. John's Hospital site. That had a lot to do with working with other units of government. The Phelan Corridor that brought people off of I-94 right about the Pennsylvania exit, for anybody that knows that area, brings traffic right through the Lower East Side to revitalize that area. Again, collaboration with federal government, with state government. Well, I was in state government at the time, local government. I know how to work with these governmental bodies. I've done it, I've lived it, and frankly, I enjoyed it. But I've been successful at it. I know the talk. I know how to collaborate with people like that. In addition, let me also add that here in Wisconsin, in the last probably a year or 2 years ago, we saw at the Hudson Hospital Foundation a need to change the gift tax or gift annuities for nonprofits for charitable purposes. Wisconsin has some very restrictive rules for gift annuities for estate planning, which really harms nonprofits here in our community. And we recognize the need for that and drafted some legislation, brought it to Senator Harsdorf and Representative Knutson, and a year later we had passed a bill. They brought them up in their respective bodies, got it passed, and we now have a new gift annuity law here in Wisconsin that will make it a lot easier for estate planning purposes and for people that want to give to their favorite charity and still get income from that type of annuity. So I've got, I have, I guess, extensive experience in working with units of government and have been very successful with it.
Okay, thank you. Vicki.
Thanks. As a woman-owned business, my company, I dealt with negotiating all the contracts with the federal and state government, and that was a primary source of business for us, as I mentioned, because we were woman-owned. And when it comes to whoever it is that I'm working with, I am a consensus builder. I work well with whoever I'm working with. And gathering, whatever the issue is, it's gathering and talking to the right people and finding out what the issue is, how to resolve the problem, and building a consensus and then making a decision. So I think that that is more important when you're working with individuals, is to be able to build a consensus. So.
Okay. I'm going to combine about 3 or 4 questions that were submitted for the last question that I'll ask before we get to closing statements. Being mayor of Hudson is a big job. Yeah. How will you find time, how will you carve out time to take on those duties given your current commitments both in your career and your personal lives? Yeah. Vicki.
That's a great question, and I am looking directly at the person that I will credit that is willing to tolerate the amount of time and effort I will put into this position, and that is my husband. And I should say if my son's still here. because I don't work full-time. I have definitely carved out, because I do feel it's going to be important that the mayor have a scheduled time that you can go there and meet with the mayor. So I think one day a week, it should be open where you can go there and talk about any issues that that are important to you. And so being available, I think, is important. You could have a mayor that just attends the council meetings and attends the functions, and that would be fine, but that is not at all what I would do. I am going to work very hard. As anybody that knows me, no matter what I do, I will put a lot of time and energy into it. And I have a family that is willing to allow me to do that. My husband was born and raised here in Hudson, and he feels a strong sense of what this community has to offer and the direction that Hudson can go. And so he is behind me 100% with being able to do that.
Thank you. Rich?
I like that last part about he's behind you 100%. That's important, Vicki. When I asked my wife if I could run for,
That's the truth.
all right, that's the way it went.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
She was behind me 100%, and that's the most important thing. Our kids are grown, they're gone. That was a big decision, big part of the decision not to run for office for the past several years, because it's very tough on families, there's no doubt about that. But yeah, it's a great question, and the things that I have going on in my life right now include the Hudson Hospital Foundation, Hudson Library Board, the Hudson Library Foundation, and those are things that would go away. And I put a lot of time into those right now, and I'm able to balance that with my career, with my office, and they would go away, and that frees up a lot of time. The nice thing about it is I do have my own business that I started here in Hudson, or I moved it to Hudson. As I said, I'm a certified financial planner. Oftentimes I meet with clients at night and different weekends. I can set pretty much my own hours, and so I don't see this as being a conflict with what I do, or not being able to do both of my jobs. By the way, for all my clients that are watching, I'll be able to do that as well. All right, so no, I really don't see that as a problem, but I think that's a great question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all again for those fantastic questions. I hope I did an okay job in representing what was submitted up here. We will move into 3-minute closing statements, and we'll reverse the coin flip from earlier. And Rich, you're up first.
Once again, Blake, thank you very much, and thank you for the chamber involvement with this. I think it's important that the people have a chance to listen to the contrast here with the candidates. It's been great, Vicki. It's great to be sitting next to you tonight, and thank you for that. I am running for mayor. I'm asking for your vote. As I said earlier, I'm hoping that I give you reasons tonight to consider casting your vote for me in the general election. There is something I think that's very important that needs to be discussed, however, that was not asked. And just recently, it was brought out in the paper. It was brought out about how we would fund different things and different projects. Vicki, my opponent, has said that she was going to be tapping our emergency fund. I just think that is something that needs to be discussed. To me, that is, look, with what I do, the very first thing that you tell people when they are about to invest, when they start their home, their family, the very first thing, you've all heard this, you have to have 6 months worth of emergency funding available in case anything happens. 6 months. That's what we have right now with our emergency fund, 6 months. All right? And the things that I read about in the paper were recurring expenses, not just one-time expenses. These were operating expenses. These were recurring expenses that will continue to eat away at that emergency fund. If we had a Flint, Michigan disaster, could you imagine what that would do to us? By the way, we only currently have about $300,000 left in our capacity, in our levy capacity. 300,000, that's it. That's not a lot. And if we spend down that emergency fund and need to go to levy, we're not going to be able to cover it. It means we're borrowing more money. And by the way, leading to borrowing. We have a great bond rating right now. We have the best bond rating there is out there. I noticed in the paper there was a comment saying that if we were to spend from this emergency fund, that it would not affect the bond rating. I hate to say this, folks, but that's just not true. And I would wager anything that if we were to spend down that emergency fund 10%, 20%, that you would see the bond rating go down. We would have a downgrade. I know this, I've seen bonding before, and I know Ehlers has said, our bonding agent has said that that rating has been very much dependent upon the fact that we have a nice emergency fund. Think about this, folks. Think about where we live right now. Think about a flood downtown coming out of the river. Think about where our wastewater treatment plant is. Think about the snow emergencies that we had a couple years ago where we had to tap the emergency fund. Think about some of the catastrophic things that we've seen or heard about. We had a FEMA issue here in town with storms that came through here where we had to use monies that otherwise were not available to us because of the timing in the year. We've used that fund, we've tapped it in the past. I just think it is reckless, and I think it's irresponsible to think that that is something that we should be even considering. So having said that, I want to finish on a high note here. It's St. Patrick's Day. Let me read you a nice little St. Patrick's Day blessing. May you be poor in misfortune, rich in blessings, slow to make enemies, quick to make friends, but rich or poor, quick or slow, may you know nothing but happiness from this day forward. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I hope that I have persuaded some of you to vote for me. I see a bright future for Hudson. This is an exciting time. I would like to be your mayor. I think I have the leadership qualities, the experience to make this work for all of us. Thank you for being here, and I certainly hope I can get your support.
All right. Thank you. Vicki.
First, I would say that is completely not true. There is not 6 months of funding sitting out there. I'm a little frustrated here, sorry, but the budget is $8 million, right? We collect $10 million. They said we need 27% in reserve for a good rating. We have more like 47 or 52% in reserves. I'm not talking about 6 months of funding. I'm talking about $4 million of an $8 million budget. So I don't agree with that. But this next step for mayor, this is an important decision for Hudson. And I think you need to look at, I hope that it is not done by voting for, either a Republican or a Democrat or a politician or a businesswoman. But I think it should be determined by who do you see, who do you see as representing Hudson? When you come to a council meeting and you have an issue that you want to present, who do you want to present it to? Who will listen to you? What is your vision for Hudson? And who do you think will hold that vision true? So tonight I've talked a lot about my business experience. And I will tell you that it took a lot of moxie to start that business. And because maybe a number of people out here have thought about starting a business, but to actually do it, it takes a lot of moxie. And if I were a guy, I'd be using another term right now. But yeah, so. But there's so many things that in starting that up that you have to look at. What type of corporation are you going to be? What about your phone system? What about your accounting software? What about your office furniture? Incorporating. There is so much that you may not even get that door open. And then once that door is open and your employees are there and they're saying, I want to make sure that I have a job in a month and that my payroll checks are going to be cashed. They're counting on you to make good decisions. And I am telling you that I will make good decisions as your mayor. And so I am asking for your vote on April 5th. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Once again, I'd like to thank the Phipps Center for the Arts and River Channel for helping to organize tonight's event. I would again like to thank all of you for coming out. This is a wonderful turnout, very engaged citizens here tonight. And most of all, I would again like to thank our candidates not only for their campaign, but the civil nature they're doing it and their interest in taking Hudson forward in the future. Thank you so much to both of you.
Thanks, Blake.